Hello guys! Today's topic will be stylized portrait. From painting a portrait to stylizing your portrait to give it atmosphere and maybe emotion can be a long way. It's hard to pinpoint any step-by-step advice for how to do it, but I prepared 4 sketches and tried different coloring, some watercolor textures, even some graphic elements, and the result is quite interesting. I finished 2 this week and we'll try to finish the other 2 the next week, but today I'll be showing you how I approached the first one, and we'll give you a few tips on what you can try if you want to experiment with your own works too. So let's get to it. I had absolutely no idea where I want my process to go this time, and so I pushed quite a lot of colors on my palette and allowed for some freedom to grab anything I choose. It's quite the opposite of my regular limited palette approach, but when we want to figure out something new, I think we have to often go the other way than where the habits tend to take us. So I started with a simple portrait sketch and things could literally go anywhere. So many options and it can be a little overwhelming. But one thing that I knew for sure is that I don't want the skin tones to be very different from a regular portrait. So let's start from there. The skin tone was a little more orangey and overall darker than what I usually use, and I didn't care much about the layering technique, which I explained in the last video. I went for the quicker approach this time and tried to place more colors into a single layer. I think this became a habit to warm certain parts of the face with reds, like for example lips and cheeks and nose parts. You can observe how that red color influences the illusion of the form. It is still kind of flat after the first layer, but you can already see how the cheeks and the nose slightly move towards from the face. Next part is first background layer. Of course that you can experiment with not painting a full background and just utilize splatters and other transparent watercolor effects and stylize your portrait this way. But I have been working with full backgrounds most of the time, so I'm going to stick to that. Besides, I have a thing for deep, dark watercolor backgrounds and paintings because I find it not only visually very interesting but also technically challenging, which as it forces me to work in multiple layers, and those effects are slightly less predictable when you do them in multiple layers instead of just one layer. I later discovered that I tend to use cooler palettes in my paintings and I prefer greens, blues, which to me are magical and help those warmer faces to pop. But I also noticed how eye-catching are warmer palettes to the eye, and maybe there is even a certain psychological impact that makes our eyes to prefer warm colors, and so I wanted to explore these here and used reds and a bit of yellow in this painting excessively. I think though red is just a little too aggressive for me to use more regularly, but let me know what you think. When I say watercolor effects, I often use table salt to create sparkles and crystallic texture and also leave pools of water on my paper, and those form beautiful blooms. The way you place color can also create gorgeous effects. For example, placing that cobalt turquoise into the red background works nicely. You have to try it multiple times to see which effects work the best for you and then play around with it. Painting details of the face is often tedious, but it needs to be done rather sooner than later. I think a good time to finalize the face is when you have all the main colors already placed. So I sometimes do this after the first background layer has dried. I don't have to say that the most important part of the portrait is usually the eyes, and that is where I tend to spend most of my time with. But lately I've had some troubles shading noses in my portraits, and that's why I think I should do more nose studies. And same goes for lips, which are quite prominent in this portrait. And following your reference closely is not enough sometimes, because when stylizing a portrait, you might want to emphasize certain parts and others push back a little. So when I was not sure how to continue with my works or where I want my works to go, I sort of created this vision board, and these are miniature prints of my artworks that I created before. And if you have already a certain body of work and a couple of pieces on your portfolio that you can put together like this, I think that it's great perspective. I checked all the pieces and I saw what type of coloring I tend to use. Like, you can clearly see that it gravitates towards cooler colors. There are certain things that I liked more than others, and I can now, when I see it like this, use it in the works that will follow more frequently. So that's my next tip. Study your previous works and mount them into one board. It doesn't matter if digital or physical like this one. And you can search for elements that were working previously and also analyze what you didn't like. It's not just an aesthetic issue, it is also elements that did not help you say what you wanted to say in that piece. This vision board with my own older works was not the only one that was helping me in my studio lately. I felt so stuck that I created also a second board, and I filled it with works of other artists that I found inspiring, and I tried to divide those artworks into the groups and study them a little. Some had very simple graphic elements to create a nice composition in them, and some were even more textured than mine, and a couple of them were using brilliant pastel colors, and my paintings looked like mud compared to them. I also observed when artists used high contrast between the face and the other parts of the painting, and then low contrast. And what visual impact did that have on the painting? In this portrait, I then tried to lower the contrast, and my face does not really stand out from the background all that much. And there is something to it when the figure fades into the elements of the painting and you have to use something else like a graphic element to point towards the face. So I want to explore this low contrast but intense coloring more further because I find it very interesting. Here I'm adding a second background layer. It allows me to cut the figure from the background and deepen its coloring. I like to use effects in multiple layers. I often add salt even to the second layer, and the crystallic effect then reveals not the white of the paper but the lighter colorful layer that is beneath. And watercolor technique is really great at creating different effects and color transitions randomly, and while you can use it in a more clean and graphic way, I think it would be shame to miss out on the opportunity to use these effects in your stylizations. Dripping water effect can also associate with some really moody atmosphere and emphasize that emotion captured in the artwork. If you've never tried to stylize a portrait into a more emotional piece, I think it would be great if you consider doing a series of paintings instead of just one piece. To me personally, painting a series always helps stabilize the technique and kind of better pin down those aspects that I really thought were working in a painting. A lot can go wrong in a single piece, and watercolor always behaves a little differently, so there are a lot of factors that can cause that the first stylization is not going to be great. The more paintings you do, the greater the chance of finding something that works, and I feel less frustrated when out of 4 pieces at least one is okay instead of not having anything finished. And I would recommend doing a smaller format when you're experimenting so that your working time on a piece isn't too long. A4 size works the best for me. There are 3 more portraits in this series, and I have plenty more room to experiment with this particular visual style. If I wasn't forced to stop painting on Friday because of the weekend's workshop, then I would probably finish all of these in just a couple of days, because I really enjoyed the process and I completely got lost in it. I'm trying to find courage to do more larger format paintings, and these tiny A4 works are a good starting point. They can even work as a thumbnail, and I can address mistakes before I move to paint this in large. Great opportunity to explore is also in your sketchbook, and then you can use those sketches as a thumbnail for larger works. Some effects, however, doesn't quite look the same when you use them on a different scale. Like the simple salty effect looks great in a small artwork, but when you are painting on something large, it's better to use larger salt to emphasize the effect. And I, for example, use the salt from a dishwasher that has larger crystals, and the effect is just incredible. Larger surface also means more space for the paint to move, so you'll need larger brushes and much more water to achieve similar effect than on a small paper. And while I'm only experimenting with watercolor now, you don't have to limit yourself, and with expanding the size of your artwork, you can start mixing media, and many more options for how to create textures will emerge. Okay, so here I finalized the watercolor part, and then I wanted to add the graphic element and used leaf gold to embellish it. If you want to try stylizing your works with additional graphic elements, you can first draw them on top with a pencil that's erasable, which gives you some freedom to change and switch things before you commit to certain lines and shapes. I quite liked the idea of enhancing the perspective here and use simple lines to drag the viewer closer to her gaze, and then just a few circles, not just for decoration, but weight a different kind of shape against the lines. I don't know if this makes any sense to you, and I have to learn how to explain my intentions better, but here I would simply say that the purpose of the graphic element is to grab your attention and drag you inside the portrait, however weird that sounds. If you've never used gold leaf before, you should give it a try because it's amazing. Process is fun like nothing else, and a pure satisfaction when you're done. You don't have to buy a 24-karat gold leaf. In many art supply stores you can get a fake that will still shimmer beautifully, and what I like the most is the embossing that it creates. The adhesive makes it stand out from the paper a little, and it just makes the artwork look much more precious than when using a gold paint. So now it's Monday and I have 2 more stylized portraits to finish, and I would love to make a video afterwards about how that went and what I discovered on the way. And if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, and you can check out this other one I made about finding your art style. Maybe it will help you out with that, and I'll see you shortly. Bye!